Right, okay, because I we could try maybe sort of
and they're coming up. It's nice to go yourself at some point in the week. It's just everything that's all you know. But it's okay, I mean, it's like, probably it's like December, I mean, when it's Christmas, it would be wrong if it wasn't.
Hi everyone, hope you enjoyed your coffee break. So we're going to get straight into our next item on the programme, which is our first of our two keynotes this week. And our first keynote is from Sunny Hundal, who's very kindly flown over late last night from Barcelona to join us today. So we really appreciate the time that you've taken already to do this for us. It's great to have you here. Sunny is a commentator and journalist and focuses particularly on issues of identity, race and religion, and writes about politics in the UK as well. He writes regularly for the Independent newspaper, and has also previously written for The Guardian, The Metro and The Times in the UK. He's an editor with Open Democracy, and he's also editor-in-chief of Barfi Culture. And we touched already a couple of times actually this morning on the insane state of the world that we're all living in, and I think, judging from your slides, I think that's what your keynote's going to touch on today. So Sunny will talk and then take some questions at the end as well, so hopefully you'll have lots of questions as we go. Thank you.
I was going to ask how many of you get annoyed when you see that face, but I think judging by the reaction, I can sort of tell that already. How many of you feel like you want a more simpler time? So
missed that guy.
So my speech today This is what it's called. It's called "We Are All Being Radicalized and We Don't Know How to Stop It." And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, who is this random Asian guy standing in front of you who likes to wear really silly bow ties? And what are you going to talk to you about? So let me tell you a little bit about myself first. And the turning point in my career came around about 2005. I used to run a magazine called Asians in Media, focusing on Asian ethnic minorities in the UK, writing about the media industry or what was going on in the media industry. Anyway, the 2005, July the 7th, terrorist attack happened in London, and I obviously followed those attacks, but also was really surprised and dismayed by the debates that happened afterwards. I knew about a lot of the issues within the communities, and I felt like I knew what was going on with the government, but I just couldn't figure out why these people were clashing in this way and having a terrible conversation. So I thought, I have to write about this stuff in the mainstream because they are not having, sort of representing this voice, a more younger generation, progressive voice from those Asian communities in the media. So I said, okay, let me start writing about it. So I started writing for The Guardian about race relations, about counterterrorism, issues around identity in 2005. And for a while, I'm thinking, okay, things are getting better, things are improving. I go out to the United States to work on the Obama campaign, and come back, thought he gets re-elected, yay, fantastic. And then, Paris agreements. And then you get to about 2014, and suddenly ISIS is on the horizon, and there are bombings going off all over the Middle East. And then 2015, we get to the Syrian refugee crisis all over Europe. By 2016, Brexit is happening in front of our eyes, and we don't even know what's going on with Brexit, can't really understand it. And then you get to Donald Trump, and you're like, this guy can't get elected, and yet he does. So going on the news today, to me, anyway, feels like we're just faced with an avalanche of shit every single day, right? And what I want to say to that is, we need to calm the fuck down. Everyone needs to calm the fuck down. So, now, there is a lot to get angry about. There is a lot of stuff going on in the world that really enrages us for good reason. And there's a lot of issues as journalists that we want to raise as well. So I can see why people feel angry. That's why I want to talk to you about radicalization. And I want to talk to you a little bit about my life as well. Shot her dead, Indira Gandhi. Now, they did that because Indira Gandhi had ordered the invasion of the most holy of Sikh shrines in Punjab. So because she did that, Sikhs got outraged. And two of them, who were her bodyguards, shot Indira Gandhi and killed her. The next day, thousands of Hindus across India, so enraged by what happened, they were going out in mobs to find Sikhs, people, from including my family, just to make them pay for what happened. People were killed. There were pictures of burning tires getting thrown around people's necks, people being lynched in the streets. And my mother was traveling at the time through South Asia. I had to dress up my brother, who had a turban on, and let his hair out and put a frock on him so people would think that he's a girl, and then and cut my hair off so that no one would think that we are Sikhs from a Sikh family. And luckily, she managed to get to the north of India where the family is, and we survived. She survived. The Sikhs see this as a genocide, and what was frightening about the whole incident, apart from the fact that the 10 to 30,000 people died, is that people were one day just willing to turn around to their neighbors and kill them. People who they had known for 10, 20 years. So, I want to emphasize again, it is frighteningly easy to radicalize people very quickly. And we have to always remember that. And part of the problem is that our media does that too. It plays into that. Because on Facebook, for example, for a while, as we all know, it was easy and accounts like this, which were actually, in this case, run by Russian organizations, to radicalize people. This is not some sort of a conspiracy theory. We know that Russian organizations paid money to Facebook to run ads to radicalize specific parts of the American public. And they did it quite easily. In fact, if I wanted to do it, it would be fairly easy. It is easy to radicalize people. I don't need to radicalize all of you. I just need to radicalize 2 tables here. If I radicalize these 2 tables and feed them what I want to feed them, then they will attack another part of the group who will then feel angry that their identity is under attack, and they will get radicalized. And as a result, some of them will overreact, which will make the rest of the group over here react to them. So we all end up in an argument just through the work of a few small bunch of people here. So it is, I have to keep on saying this, it is easy to radicalize people. And that is what happened in Europe in the 1930s, as we know. So the problem is that we're feeling it to a certain extent. We love it, because you heard that, you all have heard the phrases like people who voted for Trump are racist. People who voted for Brexit are idiots. I've said them myself. And you feel it, and it's easy to want to feel it, and it's easy to sort of go along with it. And it's harder to resist the temptation and say, what is it that they're talking about? So that was the first bit, which was just about radicalization, how easy it is to radicalize people. The second part of my talk, we call it a talk, but I want to have this more as a conversation rather than a talk, is about why it's dangerous for us to get radicalized. Now, after 2005, I met this gay Muslim guy who was living in a really nice part of Kensington, like a house, the architecture was Anish Kumar. Is it Anish Kumar or Anup Kumar, the guy who does? When I defend Sikhs, I have to go on the newspaper, in debates. I was recently invited to Canada by a Sikh group. That was the first time I had ever talked about Sikh issues. Because most of the time I'm criticizing my own community to do better. But now I have to defend them from a whole bunch of smears in the Indian media and the Canadian media, so I end up in Canadian media saying, you guys don't understand these people, actually this is not what they say. And suddenly I'm seen as a Sikh commentator, and I've never been a Sikh commentator in my life. But if you see your community get attacked, you end up being that identity. And so the problem is that the alt-right have a word for this, and they call it triggering, right? You need a small bunch of people to say something extreme and trigger a larger bunch of people. This table over here says something outrageous about you guys. And some of you will overreact. That's why it's called triggering. And because you will overreact in response. And so we're getting to this stage where basically we're just reacting to people who want to provoke us all the time. That's what we're doing essentially. Our conversations in the media, our conversations with most people are, public conversations, not the conversations that we have, with each other, the public conversation that we're having is basically us reacting to a bunch of people who want to provoke us all the time. So, and the worst example of this is climate change. And so climate change is an issue that we all know, we all have to deal with, and we all have to work with together. And yet what we can't do is convince that side, which is, say, Republicans or Tories, we can't convince them that they should trust us. That's the reason why we can't get any movement on climate change. Because, not because they, I mean, you might be absolutely right, they're captured by big money, big oil, and they're captured by capitalist interests who want to push their agenda. Absolutely, I'm not denying that. But those people find it easy to get this audience because they don't want to listen to us. We are unable to convince them that this is in their interests. And because they're not listening to us, it's easy for them to be swayed by big capitalist interests. And so climate change to me is a prime example of this polarization which we are very comfortable with and sort of going along with. Climate change is a prime example of an issue we have all failed on, not just the right. We can easily say that it's the right. That's the reason we can't make progress on climate change. I agree to a certain extent. I get really frustrated about it. But I believe it is also our fault not being able to get those people to trust us because we are not speaking in their language. We are not speaking to them. We are not able to earn their trust to say to them that we also have the same interests as you, that we are all in this together. And so that is why, to me, polarization does not work. And I know that I sound a little bit like, sounds a bit obvious, doesn't it? What I'm saying is nothing, it's not rocket science. But to a certain extent, I feel like our conversations, our national conversation that we are quite easily going along with is basically just polarizing us. And the media feeds that polarization, and we kind of every day feel like this growing sentiment that, yeah, of course, all these people who voted for Brexit are idiots. They don't understand what is going on. They are not listening to the experts, as Michael Gove said. But they're not listening to the experts because they don't trust those people. Those people have not worked for them. Those people have not elevated their lives. So why should they trust them? They don't speak their language. And that's why they don't trust them. And that's partly our fault too. So I want to end with, no, actually, that's not the end right now. There is a third part to this, which is that, so one of the people that I look up to is this lady called Catherine Hayhoe, who works in the United States. She's a climate scientist, and she goes around to churches, basically talking about how the Bible does not permit you to burn the planet. And she is constantly saying that we have to talk to them in their, I mean, not in a derogatory way. My brother, who I'll come to in a little while, was extremely religious. It is no, I don't believe in God as it goes, but I do not have any reason to criticize people who believe in faith. I'm just saying to them that, hey, there is an issue here called climate change that we need to work on for our planet. So let's talk to you in a language that you understand or that you connect with. And the problem is most of the time we're talking in a language that says, look, this is what the expert says, that's what the scientists say. Why don't you listen to us? That's basically in the mainstream media, that is the debate that goes on with climate change. And so Catherine Hayhoe goes around the country saying, look, this is about Bible, this is about conservation of our communities, this is about conservation of your children's future, this is about national security, talking about a language, using a language that these people, much of you may be thinking that right now. And I'm saying it is not, to me, capitulation, because to me this is also about electoral strategy. It's about convincing 60% of the population, 70% of the population that something is right. Maybe not 100%. I don't have to convince all of Trump supporters that racism is bad, but I have to convince enough of them that the Republican Party keep on losing on the issue, like it's, for example, now on gay rights. The Republican Party has given up on fighting against gay rights because they know it's a losing issue. But they have not given up on fighting on climate change, or even more recently, thanks to Trump, on race relations, because that is an issue that we are not able to convince people on. So that's a family picture. I apologize for that. On the left is my brother, and that's me on the right. And in the middle of that is our father. And my brother is not like me, as you can tell. He is, or used to be. My brother died last year from cancer, and he used to be the most popular Sikh preacher in this country, going around this country, going to Malaysia, the United States, going to Canada to preach in Sikhism. And people on the internet used to say, what is this about? How is this guy related to this guy who is criticizing Sikhs all the time? And this guy is like preaching Sikhism around the world. It doesn't make any sense. I'm not joking. People used to say, is it true that these two guys are brothers? Now, the point I'm trying to make is my brother and I clashed a lot on a lot of political issues, because for obvious reasons he felt that the Sikh community had to be protected after 1984. What happened, the events of 1984, and then needed a homeland for Sikhs to protect them, a bit like Jews. So his idea is that, like Jews, Sikhs need a homeland. I'm against the idea of a homeland based on one religion. Around this idea that only one religion should be supreme in that country, I'm against that idea. It's a terrible idea. And so I passionately disagreed with him on a lot of issues. But, and I was arrogant at that time to a large extent too, because arrogance allows me to say, this guy is so stupid, you know, he is not understanding why this is such a bad idea. I used to call my brother the fundamentalist. I used to go around telling people I have a brother, you know, like that book they used to say, my father, was it My Father the Fundamentalist or My Brother? Anyway, this was going to be my book, My Brother the Fundamentalist. And then I realized in the last few months that actually we weren't that far off. But we just were not talking in the same language. He voted for Jeremy Corbyn. He released a video saying we should vote for Jeremy Corbyn because, you know, I believe in equity, I believe in redistribution, I believe in all these left-wing issues. And there were other issues that we agreed on as well. The mistake that we're making is that we are not looking for common ground because that's what we need. And to a certain extent, his cancer opened my eyes to the fact that I had also been playing into that polarization and not looking for the common ground where we needed to. So I'll just leave you with this image rather than of my brother. The image, you know, we always say this: make love, not war. Always. So we as journalists, we have a special responsibility, I believe, and not just to explain the world and to report on the world, but also to report things in the right way so that our world is more stable, that the majoritarian influences, the majoritarian tendencies do not overwhelm our society. So I believe we journalists have that duty to society. So all I'm saying is let's practice what we preach. Thank you. So I've probably annoyed quite a few people, or maybe I've just said what is fairly obvious, but I'm happy to have a conversation. I'm happy to talk about how we can all calm the fuck down. I don't mean that you guys are angry, but I mean as a general society. So yeah, please ask me whatever you feel like asking.
That was really interesting, thank you. What would you have done? I really liked what you were proposing, but I can't quite see it in practice. So what would you have done? You were asked to comment in Canada around Sikhs, and you felt yourself pigeonholed into that position and be seen to be representing the whole Sikh community and defending them. What would you have done differently, given your proposition now that we should be building understanding, not being pushed into corners when we're defending what we think is right?
Okay, absolutely, good question. And that's something I was hoping someone would ask, because I don't want to go into the whole sort of proposition in the speech. So when I was in Canada, I wasn't really saying to them that we are, we are people who have not made any mistakes. I think, and I was criticized by a lot of Sikhs for not defending the community enough. And the mistake that the frustration I got immediately after 2005 was that a lot of Muslims, because they felt like they were defending the community, would just not admit there was a problem with extremism within certain parts of the communities as well, and we needed Muslims to tackle that. Now, the same thing goes for race relations, and I talk about race relations the most. What we don't need is a polarized debate which gets people, for example, to me, to say to the white working class that your interests are not the same as ours. You are the problem. So, for example, I'm just saying on race relations, for example, there was a fantastic interview in Germany the other day when this lady was interviewing the deputy leader of the AfD, the far-right party. And rather than asking them about their views on migrants and refugees, focused on what are your issues or policies on, dealing with poverty, dealing with homelessness, dealing with, these kind of issues. So, what I'm trying to say is that we have to treat those people firstly with the seriousness that they deserve, and not only on the issues. Because if they want to trigger us, they want us to say something extreme. They want us to say, white supremacy is the problem. But actually, I think that we have to make an alliance with the white working class, because the white working class is not doing that great either. If they don't feel like we are allies, they're not going to listen to us. They're going to say that, these people are not in my interest, therefore Trump is in my interests. So our language has to be very different in the way that we talk. And I feel like the language is not it is as confrontational as the language that is coming on from that side. And if it's as confrontational, then that's a problem for a start. So for example, Obama was always asked to, comment about when black people were being picked up or killed in police violence. Why doesn't he say more on Black Lives Matter? And the problem was every time he said something, the Republicans would immediately clash with it because they hated Obama, and it made the problem worse. So what I'm saying is that sometimes the language we use can also make the problem worse. So, and it ends up alienating the core, the political alliances that we need to build. That's what I'm trying to say. I don't know if that really answers the question, but I'm more than happy to give more examples along those lines. But I don't want to have to spend too much time talking either.
So often we find ourselves on the defensive or actually triggered. Are there practical ways that we can not have emotional responses when a reporter asks us a question, when we are experiencing that trigger effect? How do we, as humans, practically not have an emotional response as it's happening in a healthy way?
We are emotional people. There's nothing wrong with admitting that. But we have to see the emotion to me in a way, and I sound like one of those, self-help gurus. Believe me, I'm not. I'm just saying that emotionally, we just have to talk to the people that we're trying to convince. We have to talk to them when we're talking to the media, rather than simply saying, this is my policy. So, right now, Canada is going through a bit of a controversy because the Conservatives in Canada are using very trust language, using very in Canada, I think one response to that, which is fairly predictable, would be that these people are being racist, that this is Trumpian, that if you question diversity, that it's a problem. I don't believe that. I believe in having a conversation with people and saying, look, we are not so different to you. So I would say, and actually the Canadians have done a very good job, because for whatever reason, I guess because they feel a little bit smug that they're not Americans, that they have come up with this, we are very proud to be Canadian. We are proud of what this country has given us. This is not a language that we use in the UK, not a language that minorities are used to using. Actually, some are, but a language that a lot of the anti-racist left was uncomfortable with using. But saying, I am a proud Canadian and we have made this country great and we will continue to make this country great as Canadians, and this country has done well. Let's talk about it in a cultural way. When Nigel Farage says, for example, that immigrants, you can talk about the financial benefit to the economy, but who really cares about the financial benefit? It's about their changing of culture. He's absolutely right. Nigel Farage is not wrong when he says culture. Immigration has always been about culture. It's not about money. And we can fight that argument. We can say, yes, it is about culture, and we are adding to it, and we are making this country a better place. And I can make that argument. And you know how the debate changed in the UK? It changed actually around the time through the anti-Nazi League, which was very left-wing, trade union and working class. It got those people on board and said, we are in a fight together. And also, it came through a lot of people like Chris Christie, Amir Khan, all these people draping themselves in the British flag and saying, I'm proud to be a British, and I'm going to, I'm representing this country. It changes people's minds. So, again, sorry, I waffle on a lot. You said to me, how do we have a different emotional response? My answer to that is, we don't have to necessarily just always defend. We can reach out directly to the other side and say, look, we are doing this. This is for the betterment of our country. I think if we speak to them in a language that real concerns they have, then I think that's a language that people would feel a lot more relaxed about it. And so our language has to change, because we're not speaking a language that they are interested in.
They're not really interested because it's not how global white supremacy works. They think that you're genetically pure. It's impossible to communicate with somebody whose basis is that you're genetically inferior to them.
So that's in the media. You've got some people like Sam Harris inviting people up and saying, let's talk about race science. The response I have to that is this, and I've experienced this too. I used to run forums for Asian people in the UK. People coming on my website and saying stuff like, just because a dog born in a stable does not become old. That's what they used to do. Just because you think you're British does not mean you are British. That's what they used to say. Now, I can respond to that in two ways. I can respond to that by saying, yes, you're absolutely right. I don't feel British enough until you change your attitude. But that person is not going to change his attitude. It's usually a her rather than a him, sorry, rather than a her. I instead used to say, I'm British whether you like it or not. I used to say, this country is mine whether you like it or not, and you can go away to another country if you want to, but I'm here to stay. And I'm going to change this country for the better and continue to work with other people in this country. Now, the white supremacists are still talking about the American population.
According to the last election, they're almost 51%.
Well, that's what I mean. You know, I don't believe that all of those people voted for Trump entirely because they believe in white supremacy. I believe, though, that if we tell them that they believe in white supremacy, they're going to think that's not such a bad thing. That's what my feeling is. If we keep on telling them that you're racist, they're going to start thinking, hey, maybe this racism thing is such a bad idea. So I believe we should say to them, I know that you don't feel that the elites are listening to you. And it's true, people, there are good reasons why the white working class in America is angry. We know this. There are very good reasons why the white working class in America does not trust the establishment, does not trust the American elites. Over the last 30 years, it has completely failed them. And if we don't sound like we are interested in their affairs, we are interested in them, why should they listen to us? They're not going to listen to us, they're going to go for Trump.
They used to vote Democratic.
They used to vote Democratic, and the Democratic also went to centrist. I mean, I love Obama, seriously. I went to both times, I went to the US, every day on Twitter I'd be defending Obama. But the Democratic Party was way too timid on understanding the depth of the problem from the 2008 crash and actually the conditions that led up to it. And I say that as a person who's usually just, then they will believe us. And if they believe us and they start to trust us, then I think they will listen to us on issues of race. Because right now we're making it easy for Trump to say that these people are not interested in your affairs. The Democratic Party is only interested in Hispanics and blacks. That's what they're saying. And if we sound like that, that's what they're going to believe. Yeah, absolutely. And we're playing into that. That's what I mean by, to a certain extent, we react to them, and then as a result, we fall into their trap. We have to resist that trap. Yeah, there are about 25% of people in the United States and possibly the UK who believe in white supremacy, but that's not the majority. If I can get the other 75%, I'm happy with that. I hope that wasn't too long or waffly.
Hi. Well, there's always an interest in race as well as oil. Well, like, I'm thinking, for example, Trump speaking about racism against Mexicans. The interest, it's really, for me, it's really clear. You know, the new oil is the water. So then you make projects water from solar rivers in the city. You know, so I'm sorry, Mexico. What do you think about that?
Besides Saudi Arabia, but he will criticize other countries as harboring Islamic extremists. So there's clearly an agenda, and absolutely in power, because people feel defensive of those people. It's crazy, but it has. I mean, support for immigration has gone up to 80% in some parts of the US, which is crazy. So they make it worse, and yeah, a lot of it is. I think the strongest argument against Trump isn't that he's racist, and he did that. The Tea Party did that fantastic. There's a great article political about the Tea Party. So many people are just making them outraged, and then selling them merchandise, and then selling them T-shirts, and getting them to pay donations, and then just the organization just went bust, and these people just went off with money. It's a fantastic scam. Extremism is a scam. It's a money-making scam. So we have to not feed it, because half the time people like Robson and all these, they just make money of these other people who don't have anyone else speaking for them. And so they make great money out of it. It's a money-making scam. That's what it is. That's why I always say to people, you're just being fleeced by Hundal. It's not like saying anything interesting. Like, about it. So he started talking about it in 2011 when he realized there was loads of money that would get about it. He started going into it, and now he's like, wow, this is such a great money maker. And by making him into a big person, we're just feeding him more money. So this is why I get frustrated. I think all these, Trump, Raj, people like Tommy Robinson, they're just money makers. They're just trying to scam everyone. And that's what we should focus on.
It's quite interesting that you say that, because I've got two questions for you. The first one was precisely about the danger of actually giving these scam artists, if you want to call them that, a platform by engaging them in conversation. When you look at the way a lot of so-called balanced reporting works, is you have somebody with a calm, reasoned, sensible opinion, and then they're like, okay, we need somebody from the other side. Climate change is a classic example. You know, you'll have 96% of scientists with a computer that can look at some weather data and maybe got a degree at some community college and says, oh no, actually I disagree. And then each of them is given their 30 minutes each, and at the end of the day you can walk away thinking, oh well, there's a few good points against why this climate change thing might not be happening. So that'd be my first question. The second question is, we all have publications, and I've found that our readership is actually fairly stable. I see a danger in that. How do we attract people to us? The truth is, that's what we do. We make a publication. We're not going to suddenly change the way we talk radically, and yet we want to engage people in conversation. Is there anything you would recommend in terms of how we get people to maybe see our side of the story, to maybe buy into our point of view, without suddenly launching a separate publication that's targeted there and speaks a completely different language?
I like the second question more than the first one. But the first one wasn't even a question. You're absolutely right. The way that the BBC, especially, which really annoys me, I've written about it so many times, that they have this idea of balance is really terrible for the debate around climate change. But like I said earlier, what's frustrating to me about climate change is that we still can't persuade so many voices on the Conservative side to say, trust us, we have your interests at heart, we have the same issues. And that a little bit frustrates me. I know that about 80% of people believe in climate change. But we have to take some responsibility why more of them don't. So, but the media is definitely playing a part in that. The second question is more interesting because I'm also launching, I just launched, 6 months ago I launched my own publication as well, which was to sort of say, okay, you know what, I'm going to put my ideas down in practice. So the South Asian community across the diaspora, which is in the US, the UK, Canada, is growing huge, very wealthy, and very, very racist against each other, right? We have huge problems of religious bigotry, we have huge problems of patriarchy, attitudes towards women, and homophobia. I'm not going to deny any of this. I say this all the time probably to people. We have major problems within our communities. So then I had the same issue. I was like, okay, so now I'm thinking the way I'm going to come traditionally what I used to do. Like, if I'm on publication, I have to start attacking homophobia, start attacking, these crazies in our communities. But the problem that I find is that people know about using it, and they have become. In 2010, I would do much more negative stories. Now negative stories are everywhere. They're just like So I had the same issue, like how would I do that and create? But it was one of my most popular articles. Because people, I believe that right now what people are looking for are positive stories. We just have to do those positive stories, do those stories in a way which says, A, there is much to celebrate, but even the positive stuff that we want to put out has to be, or let me put it another way, people have to trust me first. They have to trust me that this guy who's running this publication can speak for Hindus, Sikhs and Muslims who are constantly at each other's throats amongst the Sikh community. They have to trust me first over those religious organizations, right? I have to gain their trust first and then say that these extremists are bad. And I have to give them a positive vision of the world that they feel like comfortable with. So the challenge, I think, for us as street newspapers, as publications, as people who, whether we use online stuff, is to celebrate people. Celebrate a more positive vision of the world that we want to see. So do stories about Sikh queer people, do stories about Muslim queers. There are loads of them, ex-Muslims as well. Just celebrate that diversity of the world we're in, celebrate the world we're in. And I know that sounds like I'm telling all of us to join hands and sing Kumbaya, but that's not really what I'm saying. I am saying that though, that our business model, I think, has to change, because our social media has become basically a fire hose for dog videos and Trump stories, or friends getting married and having babies. So that's what I'm trying to say. It's just that we need to. I feel like I'm not competing with the New York Times or the Washington Post. They're doing fantastically, trying to dig into what Trump is doing, and they're attracting a lot of subscribers for that. And if I was thinking about this, I would think maybe I should do the same thing. If I did a lot of digging into this kind of stuff, people are really angry about what's going on with the Trump administration will come to me. But I don't think that's going to work. I think if the vision for us is positive, which is what it should be, this determination of saying, let's go down the polarized voice and talk about how we can get organized against Trump and get organized against his people, and say, well, what kind of world do we want? And what symbolizes that? And so I have to do videos celebrating Asian culture. That's what I do. Just to try and sell a positive vision. Anyway. That was going on too long again.
If anybody has one last question, we've just got time for one more. Anyone? No? I think your answers, I think, were really
I talked them all out.
No, that was really fascinating. I think we obviously chatted a good bit beforehand, but I guess I didn't expect, because I'd seen your slides and we chatted before about some of the the negative things that I knew that you were going to cover, but I think that the fascinating thing there for me was actually, I think it's really food for thought for everyone about the responsibility that we actually all have to find common ground and not to take the bait to get in our echo chambers, particularly on Twitter and that kind of thing. So I think I'm assuming as well for the journalists and the editors in the room, there's probably quite a lot of ideas about how we can potentially sort of find common ground and maybe even do things, some pieces, some articles, possibly even the entire editorial approach slightly differently. So that's really interesting, actually. Nice that you could turn all of that around and give us some positive thoughts about what we can all do better as well. So thank you, that was really fascinating. I think everyone will agree. So yeah, round of applause please for Sunny. And you can stick around and join us for lunch if you like, which we're just about to go to now. But before we do that, just back to keep everyone right timing wise, because we won't actually be back in this room now until tomorrow morning. But the next, so lunch is from 12:30 to